Hey guys. So obviously we are doing something a little bit different this week. Instead of meeting at the church, you're currently meeting in somebody's house, whether it's mine or Jen's. But we still wanted to continue our WWJD series, but maybe in a little bit different of a way. Because tonight what we're going to talk about, it's something that's a little different and maybe even a little uncomfortable for us. I know it's something that's hard for me to talk about because it's something that's uncomfortable for me. But I think it's something that's very important, and especially as you look at Jesus' life, you see it's something that he dealt with too. And so you might be kind of freaking out a little bit thinking we're going to talk about something super creepy. We'll save that for February. But what I want to talk about tonight are emotions. Because emotions is something that we all have. All right, we all feel things. We all have these different emotions inside of us. But I think we tend to react differently. I think there's two different ways that we react. I think all of us are either one, a suppressor, or two, an expressor. And what I mean by that is if you're a suppressor, you still feel all the same emotions just like everybody else. You feel anger, you feel love, you feel sad, you feel happy. You feel all of those different things just like all the people around you, but maybe you suppress them, you hold them inside. And so people are often thinking like, okay, this person seems kind of calm or a little quiet. That might fit you. Maybe you're a suppressor. But on the other side, there's expressors. And those are the people, and you probably know quite a few of them, to where as soon as they feel an emotion, they are showing it. You never have to wonder what they're feeling. They just live out their emotions. They have their emotions on their sleeves, as some people say. And so I think everybody fits into one of those two groups, either suppressors or expressors. And so what we're going to do with this video tonight, it's not going to be just me talking. We're going to have a couple pause breaks. And I've got some questions that I want you to talk about on those pause breaks and to have some discussion about as you're sitting in the living room. So the first thing we're going to do, the first two questions. Number one, I want you just as a group to talk and kind of decide, are you a suppressor or an expressor? Are you somebody that feels emotions and suppresses them, or as soon as you feel them, you're showing them, you're expressing them? So that's the first question. You're going to see that on the screen. And then the second question is this. How have you seen your relationship with your emotions change as you've gone from childhood into being a teen, as you've gone from being a child into middle school or high school? Because I think for a lot of us, maybe we started off as an expressor and now we're more of a suppressor, or maybe it was the other way around. So what we're going to do here in just a second, we're going to pause the video and you're going to take a couple minutes to talk about that. And whenever you're done, you can hit the start button again and continue on with the next section. So for now, we're going to pause the video in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. We'll be back in just a second. So hopefully you just had some good discussion as we talked about this. I know for me, as I look and as I even answer those questions for myself, whenever I was younger, I was definitely an expressor. I felt a lot of emotions and I didn't really know what to do with them. I know I probably seem like big and tough and super cool and quiet now, but as a kid, it didn't take much to set me off. I remember there was one time where back whenever Beanie Babies were cool, like we went to McDonald's, the Beanie Babies were the Happy Meal toys, and I thought they were the coolest thing ever. And so I collected so many of these, like I had just an armful, and I always had to take them everywhere I went with me. So I remember one Sunday morning, I took them to church, and then we were out on the playground, and I was on one of the swings, and it's kind of hard to swing with an armful of Beanie Babies. So I sat them down on the ground next to me, and as I was swinging, there was this one kid. His name was Jackie Russell. I still remember to this day, he was a jerk. And so I'm swinging, and I see him coming, and he runs up and he grabs a handful of my Beanie Babies and goes running away. And so without even thinking, my fuse just goes off. I get angry. I jump off the swing. I chase him down at church on the playground. I tackle this kid, yank my Beanie Babies back. I felt things, okay? Like I didn't know how to deal with my anger. And I still remember though, to this day, the Sunday school teacher came over and split us apart. And after Jackie went away, he turned to me. He's like, "Don't do it again, but good job." So I was a tough kid, right? I had all these emotions. I could tell you other stories of like the time at school where a kid took my candy out of a piñata, and so I just threw all my candy at him and started crying. I was cool. Yeah, proud moment right there. But yeah, so definitely as a kid, more of an expressor. But now emotions are weird for me, and I've definitely become a suppressor over the years. I don't know exactly when the change happened. I know a couple weeks ago I shared a story of the last time I really lost my temper with some of the high schoolers, and that was definitely a moment. But throughout the years, just my relationship with emotions began to change. It could have been the way I was raised, because I love my parents, they're awesome. But a lot of times, like the big phrase in our house was like, if you want to cry, I'll give you something to cry about. And it wasn't meant in like some angry or abusive way at all, but it's just one of those things of like, there's no need to cry. Like, stop crying, stop showing emotions. And just over time, you still feel all of these things, but I just realize I suppress all of my emotions. I'll be vulnerable and I'll show a lot of things to a certain extent, but it's actually hard for me to really be emotionally vulnerable with people. And so I know this is like a weird thing to talk about, and I don't know exactly how your conversations just went, but I know for me, whenever I think about Jesus, we're in this WWJD series, I think about Jesus and I don't really think about emotions. Because like we know, okay, Jesus was this perfect, sinless guy. And so in my mind, like whenever I think of all these stories of Jesus, I never think of him showing emotion. I picture Jesus always with this straight, very serious face, being just very real, being very just serious with everybody and never laughing, never smiling, never getting angry. But if you begin to actually look into the Bible, you see there's different times where he showed emotions. And so tonight, we're going to pause again here in just a second. And what I want you to do, you're going to open up your Bibles into John chapter 11. And we're going to read a passage. You'll see the reference on the screen. I want a couple of you to take turns reading through this story. And then you're going to have some questions that come up on the screen after that. And I want you to talk about that. So we're going to pause again here. You're going to see the passage on the screen. It's John chapter 11. You're going to read through that together. And then we're going to come back and have some questions for you. So go ahead and do that now. So you should have just finished reading through John chapter 11. And I wanted to break this down a little bit and talk through what we just read. I want to pick up here really quickly, and this is going to be in verse 30. So if you want to read along again, that's all right. But this is John chapter 11, verse 30. It says, Jesus had stayed outside the village, at the place where Martha met him. When the people who were at the house consoling Mary saw her leave so hastily, they assumed she was going to Lazarus' grave to weep. So they followed her there. When Mary arrived and saw Jesus, she fell at his feet and said, Lord, if only you had been here, my brother would not have died. When Jesus saw her weeping and saw the other people wailing with her, a deep anger welled up within him, and he was deeply troubled. Where have you put him? He asked them. They told him, Lord, come and see. Then Jesus wept. The people who were standing nearby said, see how much he loved him. But some said, this man healed a blind man. Couldn't he have kept Lazarus from dying? Jesus was still angry as he arrived at the tomb, a cave with a stone rolled across its entrance. We're going to stop there. I know the story gets good right after that. But what I want you to get from that is we see this vulnerable moment from Jesus, to where first it says that he gets angry. And there's a lot of different people that have different opinions on like what that means. Some people try to say he was getting angry at Mary and Martha for being upset with him not coming and being there to heal his brother. But at the same time, that's kind of ridiculous. Like this is Jesus we're talking about. He loved Mary and Martha. They had a good friendship. And it's human to feel these emotions. So I don't think he was angry about that. Instead, what a lot of scholars think is that Jesus was angry at this idea of death. He was angry at the brokenness that he sees in the world. And it brought up this deeply troubled him. It brought up this anger in him. And then you get to John 11:35, which is the shortest verse in the Bible, where it just says, Jesus wept. And if you look into the word that's used there, this isn't just like, okay, like one little tear. Like, no, this is like ugly crying. Like Jesus broke down sobbing in front of all of these people because he was so hurt, because he was so sad at the loss of his friend, because he was so sad at this death. And I think a lot of times for us, like I said earlier, whenever we think of Jesus, we don't think of emotion. We don't think of Jesus kind of showing sorrow or anger. We think of maybe a very straight-faced Jesus all the time. And so to see this picture of Jesus showing emotion, of him being angry at death, but then also crying, breaking down, I mean, it's kind of cool to think that Jesus, like God in the flesh, would ugly cry with probably snot dripping out of his nose. I know it's not a pretty picture, but that's Jesus. He was real. And so I think for us, like what I want you to hear tonight as we do this WWJD series is it's okay to feel. It's okay to have emotions, because we all have them. Like we talked earlier, whether we're an expressor or suppressor, we all have emotions. We're all going to feel things, and that's okay. But for whatever reason, maybe you grew up kind of like I did, where you had your parents or people around you just saying you need to be tougher, or you need to act like a man, or that they would give you something to cry about. And over time, we begin to suppress our emotions, and we don't want to show emotion. And it's sad. Like that kills me, because I think sometimes God is trying to use our emotions to fix things in the world. Because what happens sometimes if we're not willing to feel things, If we have these emotions, if there's something that breaks our heart, but we try to suppress it and not show it, maybe God is trying to break our heart for a hurt in the world that needs fixed. Maybe there's a brokenness in the world that is breaking us, but we don't want to admit it, and so we try to hide, we try to run away from the pain. But maybe God is putting us in that painful spot and letting us have these emotions because he wants us to step into that hurt and fix it. If you look at the rest of the story with Lazarus, Jesus goes on to actually raise him from the dead and bring him out of the grave. And that's incredible because Jesus has this broken moment where he shows emotion and then he begins to act out of that emotion and brings a man back from the dead. Like that's crazy. And what I'm not saying is that whenever you cry or whenever you show emotion that all of a sudden dead people are going to start coming back to life, because that would be freaking terrifying. But what I am saying is that we all know there's hurt in the world. We all know there's brokenness. We know there's things that aren't right with this world. What if God is trying to use your emotions? What if God is trying to break your heart for something that breaks his heart because he wants you to step into that hurt and fix it? What if there are things that are wrong in your school? What if there are things that are wrong in your home that God wants you to step up and be part of the solution? But maybe because we're scared of these emotions, maybe because we're scared of the pain, we're suppressing it and we're missing what God is calling us to do. And so what I want to challenge you with this week is it's okay to feel. It's okay to have emotions. It's okay to be sad. It's okay to be depressed sometimes because maybe, again, God is trying to break your heart for something. It's okay to get angry as long as it's a good anger. It's okay to just hurt. It's okay to feel things. Because the reality is it's not healthy to feel all these emotions and try to suppress it. It's not healthy to have all these different things inside of us and to try to hold it in. Maybe we need to act out of that. And it's not about letting our emotions control us, but it's about learning to control our emotions, not in a suppressive way, but in a way that directs them to whatever God is calling us to. It's about learning to see that sadness in ourselves, those things that break our heart, and being willing to step into that thing that broke our heart and to fix it. So this week, I want to challenge you. Next time you see something that makes you sad, it's okay. Be sad. Or maybe you see something that gets you angry. It's okay to feel that angry. Don't go and punch somebody in the face because that's not okay. But if it's a righteous anger, maybe you see somebody getting picked on or somebody you care about being hurt, it's okay to feel angry about that and to step in and come to their defense. So what I'm saying is just don't run from your emotions. Don't hide from those things. Don't let them control you, but don't suppress them. Learn to use those in a healthy way and maybe open your eyes to see what God might be calling you to through the things that you are feeling. So it's okay to feel. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take some more time. There's going to be some more questions that you'll see on the screen, so you can pause it and leave those questions up. But we're going to take a time and just talk a little bit about emotions. So I'm going to pray for us, and then we're going to have this conversation. Dear God, thank you so much for the very intentional way that you created us. I know for a lot of us, emotions are uncomfortable. They're not something we want to talk about. They're not something we want to deal with. And sometimes it's just easier to suppress them. But God, I ask that tonight that you would help us to step into this a little bit. And maybe it's going to be an uncomfortable conversation, but help us as we just talk about emotions and help us to see maybe some of these good emotions that you're placing in us, some of these things that maybe you're calling us to. Maybe you're breaking our heart for something that we've been trying to hide from, that we're trying to run away from. But maybe, God, it's time for us to actually feel that hurt, to feel that heartbreak and step into it and be part of the solution. So I just ask that you would guide our conversations and may you be honored and glorified through everything we say and do. In your name, amen.